So welcome to Jumbo IS and welcome to our lecture series called Daily News in Shorts. In this lecture series, we cover a particular day's current affairs in a short span of time. Now, needless to say this, you have to revise this lecture just after watching it. Because if you'll just watch this lecture, then you will quickly forget these current affairs. But you have to retain these current affairs in your memory till your exams, at least till your exams. Therefore, revision is extremely important. Now, you can revise these current affairs from the notes provided by us, and these notes shall be shared on our Telegram channel. The link to our Telegram channel is provided in the comment section just below this video. Alright then, enough of the introduction. Let's straight away jump into the lecture. But first, let's take a look at the list of topics that we shall cover today. So let's begin. So daily current affairs, 11th of December, Thursday, and here is the topics list. Now, China's record 1 trillion trade surplus. So China's trade surplus, which is exports minus imports, has reached $1 trillion. That means China exports $1 trillion worth of goods more than it imports. That's really spectacular. No country has ever done it. So what implications does this have for the entire world, global economy? We'll talk about this. Then second topic is related to Diwali now in UNESCO's heritage list. So what is this UNESCO's heritage list? What is the criteria and why was Diwali included? Okay, we'll talk about this. Then topic number 3 is with respect to a recent Supreme Court judgment deciding the basis for Caste Certificate, SC Caste Certificate. Okay, it's important because you need to know some constitutional provisions as well as legal provisions with respect to how a person gets caste certificates. Okay. Then topic number 4 is related to decline of Indus Valley civilization because recently some researchers conducted thorough research and they have found out the exact reason why Indus Valley civilization fell apart. Okay, so we will talk about this reason as well as the competing theories. Okay, so topic number 1 is related to economics portion of your UPSC syllabus, particularly international economics. Topic number 3 is clear-cut related to culture portion of your UPSC syllabus. Topic number 3 is clearly related to polity portion of your UPSC syllabus, and topic number 4 is related to history, particularly ancient history portion of your UPSC syllabus. Okay, so these are the 4 topics. Let's start discussing them one by one, starting with topic number 1, and that is China's record $1 trillion trade surplus. Now, we all know that China is called the factory of the world. All countries in the world mostly buy their goods from China. China has created this incredible supply of goods. Okay, high-tech goods, low-tech goods, all goods mostly come from China, or the supply chains basically are routed through China. So everyone has some form of trade, bilateral trade, import-export with China, right? But this time around, for 2025, in this year, China broke all records because China's exports or trade surplus crossed $1 trillion mark. No country has ever achieved this. Even China has never achieved this. Okay, so this is big news for China. But this has some sad, bad implications, consequences for the entire world's economy, as well as some bad consequences for China itself. Yes, it is happy news, but there are some bad consequences for China itself. So what are the economic consequences, economic implications of this new development? Let's talk about this because by discussing this, some concepts, static economic concepts would get cleared. Okay, so let's begin. So China's record $1 trillion trade surplus. So what was in the news? China's record $1 trillion trade surplus signals both export strength, naturally, and deep domestic imbalance. Why deep domestic imbalance? Look, China produces, let's suppose, 100 goods. Okay, but Chinese people only consume 20 of these goods. So there is 80 goods of surplus. Okay, and where does this 80 good surplus go? It goes towards exports. Right? So the more China exports, the more is this number. That means there is very less domestic demand. Demand for Chinese goods within China. So export numbers are good. Okay, surplus export numbers are very good. But this is also a signal that Chinese demand for goods is very low. And that is bad news for the economy because when demand is low, the economy or GDP falls. Okay, make sense? So it showcases, yes, good export strength, but bad consequence, deep domestic imbalance, which is domestic demand in China falling even lower. And it will sharpen global trade tensions and debates on second China shock in advanced manufacturing sectors. So what happens now? The more China exports, now China has this huge supply, okay, to export to the world. And you all know that prices are decided by demand and supply. Now, China has a lot of supply, even more than demand, global demand. So when Chinese supply is high, Chinese prices would be low. So China is selling these high-tech goods at very cheap prices. Let's take the example of electric cars. China is selling electric cars to Europe at very cheap prices. Now, there are European car manufacturers who are manufacturing electric vehicles. But because China is selling these electric vehicles at such low prices that these European car makers are not able to compete. Because why would people buy an expensive electric car? They can buy a Chinese alternative. So these big car companies are getting out of business. Now, this is not just happening in cars. It is happening in all high-tech products. Okay? So this will increase trade tensions because now European countries, USA will apply tariffs on China. Yes? This export, so much supply of Chinese goods into global markets is called second China shock. So what was first China shock? I'll explain everything, okay? Don't worry. But you understand the gist of the matter, right? Now, what is China's export strength? Okay, so in the first 11 months of 2025, China's trade surplus crossed $1 trillion, highest ever by any country. And this is despite the fact that Donald Trump applied tariffs on China. Okay, and because of those tariffs, well, Chinese exports to USA declined. Chinese exports to USA declined because of Donald Trump's tariffs. But China compensated for that by exporting more to other countries. US exports declined, but exports to other countries increased. China increased that share. Exports to US fell by 29%, but overall exports have stayed strong because China leaned more on non-US markets, especially global south, developing countries. Okay? Now this surplus is rising, but there is one downside. Even as Chinese domestic demand, both for consumption and investment goods, remains weak, this indicates that China has overproduction capacity. Okay, overproduction capacity. People are not asking for these goods, but China is producing a lot of goods, so it has to export. You understand? This is one problem area. Okay. Now, many people are saying that China did something special in 2025. That's why it reached $1 trillion mark. But that's not true. This has been going on for years. This happened because certain long-term things were happening. What were the reasons behind this $1 trillion mark? Okay. So reasons. First of all, China has overproduction capacity, dense supply chain clusters. Many cities in China are dedicated to one product only. The entire city manufactures that one product in bulk. Dense supply chain clusters. Then, Chinese official currency, renminbi, is weak, is depreciated. And we have discussed this. When your currency depreciates, well, your export prices also come down. So China is able to sell cheap goods to the market because it has artificially devalued its currency. Okay. Then government is also favoring exports. Plus continuous expansion in production capacity. Despite low demand in China, supply has increased. More and more factories have come up. So this happened. Now I told you this will have bad implications, bad consequences for the entire world as well as China. What are those bad implications? So number one, we have discussed this in one of our current affairs lectures like a month back, which is called involution. China is itself facing involution. What is involution? When there is very low demand but excessive supply. Let's talk about electric vehicles. There are so many EV companies in China. There is not much demand for EVs in China. So what will happen? Low demand but extremely high supply, so many players, so many companies. So these companies want to capture this very little market share, low demand. So how would they do it? They will get into price wars. What are price wars? My car is cheaper than your car. Then that company will say, I will reduce my price further. Then it will reduce its price further. And this process will go on until the prices, market price of cars becomes so low that profit is impossible. This is involution. This is happening in China, especially in EVs. So one bad consequence for China. Now for the world, foreign partners, especially Europe, accuses China of distorting markets and undermining their industrial models through cheap exports in strategic sectors. Because China is now selling cheap products in strategic sectors. Which sectors? Like electric vehicles, batteries, solar products, electronics, which are strategic for any country. Now, companies, domestic companies of other countries are facing this Chinese competition. And because China has so much supply, it is kind of dumping its goods into Europe and other markets at very low price. So their industries are getting destroyed. Okay, Europe, USA. Now, China did that in 2002 also. When China became a full-time member of WTO, it got access to European and American markets. So China dumped its goods back then. That was known as China Shock 1.0. Now China again has overcapacity, and now China is ready to perform China Shock. And this time around it is called 2.0. What is China Shock? When China has so many goods that it dumps in other markets. Dumping means selling it at extremely low price. Simple, okay? So this is happening. All right, India is also facing the brunt. By the way, let me tell this to you. Nonetheless, that's all you need to know as far as this first topic is concerned. Now let's quickly shift our focus to second topic, and that is Diwali in UNESCO Heritage List. So you all know that UNESCO maintains a World Heritage Site list. Okay, World Heritage Site means all those physical sites, physical places which are of importance to human heritage. They are listed down. Okay, this includes Taj Mahal, this includes many other national parks, this includes various other monuments. Okay, UNESCO also maintains another list, heritage list only, but that heritage list is called intangible heritage list. Tangible, intangible, what is the difference between the two? So tangible is something which you can touch and feel. Intangible is something which you cannot touch and feel. For example, a song. Song is intangible. You cannot hold a song, touch or feel it. Okay. Similarly, culture is intangible. Okay. Rituals are intangible. Right. There are so many things which are intangible. Like Taj Mahal is tangible, so it is in World Heritage Site list. But UNESCO maintains an intangible heritage list. Okay, which includes oral songs, written literature. Okay, traditions, culture. Now, last year, UNESCO added Durga Puja festival into their intangible heritage list. This year, UNESCO has decided to add Diwali in its intangible heritage list. Okay, so what is this intangible heritage list? What is its criteria? And what is the significance of Deepavali's addition? Let's talk about this. Okay, so Diwali in UNESCO heritage list. So what was in the news? So Diwali's inscription in UNESCO's intangible cultural heritage representative list strengthens India's soft power, gives global recognition to the festival as living tradition. Okay, so it gives global recognition to Diwali. It increases India's soft power because Diwali is Indian festival. Okay, promotes Diwali, promotes Indian culture. Okay, brings this Indian culture to international audiences, and it will also preserve and protect this culture. Okay, because the whole purpose of maintaining this list is preservation of culture. Okay, now what is the context of this entire news? Deepavali, the festival of light, has been inscribed on UNESCO's representative list of the Intangible Cultural Heritage ICH for 2025. Last year it was Durga Puja of Kolkata. The decision was taken at 20th session of ICH Intergovernmental Committee, and this Intergovernmental Committee sat in Red Fort, Delhi. Now, India has total 15 items in this list, okay, which includes Kumbh Mela, Durga Puja, Garba, Yoga, Vedic chanting, Ram Leela, and now Diwali. So there are 15 items. By the way, Bihar's Chhat Puja is nominated for next year. Okay, so that's the information you need to know. Now, about this list, so ICH covers living traditions and expressions passed down generations, unlike tangible heritage, which are touch and felt, okay, like monuments and archaeological sites. UNESCO broadly classifies these intangible items into 5 domains. Okay, 5 categories of items are included in this list. Oral traditions, oral stories, oral legends, performing arts, classical dance, classical music, social practices, rituals and festivals like Diwali, Durga Puja, knowledge related to nature, universe, and traditional craftsmanship, traditional pottery, traditional painting. So these are the 5 items. These practices are valued because they reinforce identity, cultural diversity, and continuity in an increasingly globalized and conflict ridden world. All right. So, this is the basic idea behind preserving them. Now, what is the criteria? For inscription, an element must be inclusive. It shouldn't exclude any community. Representative, community based, okay? So, which involves active participation of the entire community, like in Diwali. Intergovernmental Committee created under 2003 Convention for Safeguarding of the Intangible Cultural Heritage. So, there was an international convention under which this list is maintained. That international convention came into force in 2003. Okay, this intergovernmental committee decides which tradition will be part of this list, evaluates nomination dossiers, recommends safeguarding measures and best practices. The list also includes a subsection for elements in urgent need of safeguarding. So certain items on this list are in urgent need of safeguarding, which means they are getting extinct. For example, traditional pottery of Cham people in Vietnam and Halat stonework of Turkey. Clear? That's about it. Now, let's quickly shift our focus to another news item which is related to polity, and that is SC Caste Certificate. Now, what happened recently? You see, in India, you get an SC certificate which is beneficial for government reservation or reservation in educational institutes, right? SC certificate is important. Now, how is it decided whether you belong to the SC community or not? Look, if you're born to SC parents, scheduled caste parents, you also belong to scheduled caste community. But what if one of your parent is not from this caste? Okay, what if one of your parent, it is an intercaste marriage? Clear? This can happen, this happens. Now, whether you inherit your caste from your parent, from your father or mother is out there in the open. Now, generally in India, what was practiced? Okay, as per various judgments of the court, what was practiced? You inherit your caste from your father. So if your father belongs to SC community, then only you will get this benefit. Okay. If your mother belongs to SC community and father belongs to some other community, then you won't get this benefit. That was the general norm, which is known as patrilineal norm. But recently, what happened was that there was a girl from Puducherry. Okay. Her mother belonged to SC community, but her father did not. Now that girl was raised by her mother. Father was absent. Okay. Now her mother was SC. So she raised her daughter in the SC community. So she was raised in that entire community. Okay. Now she claimed in Supreme Court that she should get SC certificate because her entire upbringing was in that community. Okay. So patrilineal inheritance of caste certificate doesn't apply over here. So what did the Supreme Court say? Supreme Court clear-cut mentioned that, look, the whole idea of giving reservation benefits was that, well, we want to remove socio-economic disadvantages. Okay? I mean, whether you inherit from father or mother, this is immaterial. We want to remove socio-economic disadvantage. Now, if this girl was raised in a socio-economic disadvantageous community, then she deserves it. So, Supreme Court basically changed its stance from its earlier judgment. Earlier, it used to decide patrilineal descent. But now, the court will look at your circumstances. How was your upbringing? If it was an SC community, you will get this certificate, immaterial of the fact, irrespective of the fact whether your SC status comes from your father or mother. That was the whole idea. Okay, so let's quickly talk about this. So SC caste certificate, I have explained the entire issue to you. Okay, now let's get into the specifics. Okay, yeah. So what was the case facts? What were the case facts? So the girl was from Puducherry. Okay, and her mother belonged to Adi Dravida caste, which is included in the SC list. But her father was non-SC. Okay, but she was raised by her mother. Clear? Now, first, you know what the court said. But first, let's talk about what are the legal and constitutional provisions with respect to this SC certificate, okay? So Article 15 or 16 empowers the state to make special provisions like reservations for SCs, STs. But who counts as SC or ST? Which community counts as SC or ST? That is not decided by the constitution. That is decided by a presidential order, central government basically, under Article 341, 342. So remember, a presidential order, remember this term, under 341, 342 will decide whether this community belongs to SC or not. Okay. Now, administratively, governments have long followed the thumb rule that a child takes father's caste, which is rooted in Hindu customary law and old traditions. The 2003 Supreme Court judgment, Puneet Rai judgment, noted that in the absence of statutory law, in the absence of any legal provision, we will assume that caste comes from father. Okay? But this was framed as a presumption, not a rigid rule, which means Supreme Court can change this rule as per the circumstances, which Supreme Court did in 2025. Now, today, we have shifted from patrilineal criteria to social disadvantage based criteria. Okay? The present legal position is that a child is presumed to follow father's caste, but this is rebutable and can be displaced if evidence shows different lived reality. The child lived a different reality. For example, if evidence shows the child was brought up by that parent, single parent, lived in that community, and actually faced socio-economic disadvantages. So Supreme Court will put this case to a test and then give a verdict. So it is not a rigid rule. Generally, it will come from father, but not a rigid rule. Okay? I hope you understood this. And now let's get back to or move on to the next news item, which is a fascinating news item, and that is decline of Indus Valley civilization. Now you all know Indus Valley civilization, the Harappan civilization, was a fascinating civilization. Okay? You all know why it was fascinating. And you all also know that it is divided into 3 phases. Early Harappan phase, mature Harappan phase, and late Harappan phase. During late Harappan phase, the entire civilization declined. Now nobody knows why it declined. Different archaeologists, historians have presented their own theories. During British times, there was this popular theory that Aryans from Central Asia invaded and they destroyed this civilization, killing so many Indus Valley people. They propagated this theory. This theory has been proven false many times. This was Aryan invasion theory. The second theory was maybe there were natural disasters like droughts, floods, and the entire community was destroyed. Theory number 3 is, well, economy collapsed. Okay, so Indus Valley civilization people used to trade with Mesopotamia, international trade, and their economy relied on this international trade. But Mesopotamia collapsed, because of which exports collapsed, economy collapsed, people had to move out of cities, sell their houses and move out of cities. So there are so many competing theories. But recently, scientists and researchers have conducted various surveys, climatic surveys, and they have come to the conclusion, and they say with authority, that the actual reason was droughts. Okay, mega droughts. Everything dried up. Rivers dried up. Everything went away. Okay, so let's talk about this theory. Okay, so decline of Indus Valley civilization. So a study published in the journal Communications, Earth and Environment by international research team utilized paleoclimate data. Paleoclimate means old climate data from 3000 BC, 2000 BC. And computer modeling to analyze the climate from 3000 to 1000 BC. The findings highlighted that the downfall of Harappa was rather a series of prolonged droughts, not just one drought, series of droughts, which led to destruction. Okay, so what happened as per them? The decline of Harappans was gradual, triggered by 4 major mega droughts between this time period. 4 major big droughts. Okay, everything dried up. Climate records show that the tropical Pacific shifted from cool La Nina, which leads to more monsoon, to El Nino. Okay, back then. Because of this El Nino phase and strong El Nino phase, well, monsoon rainfall declined by 20%. Well, agriculture collapsed. Okay, the Satluj Ghaggar system, Beas system, and many of its tributaries, Indus tributaries, they experienced reduced flows. Because of that, crop failures increased. And when crop failures happened, well, Harappans couldn't produce surplus food. You see, the advantage of producing surplus food is that you require very small number of farmers to feed the entire population. when you don't produce surplus food, then everyone has to farm. Everyone has to practice agriculture. Now, because Hadappans produced surplus agriculture, so some people, some sections of the society, they were freed up to pursue other occupations like craftsmen, leaders, lawyers, and that. But because agriculture collapsed, everything, cities collapsed. Okay. Plus, because of lower river levels, Hadappan ports, especially in Lothal, that collapsed. And Hadappans used to trade with Mesopotamia through Lothal port. So that led to decline of international trade, decline of economy. So droughts, four major mega droughts were the reason. Now, this is the claim of this international team of researchers. But what other theories are given about Hadappan decline? So number one is change in river system. So rivers change their course. So because they changed their course, led to floods in various urban areas, the rivers destroyed those urban settlements. Okay. And that was because of earthquakes. Then number two, collapse of Mesopotamia. We have discussed this. Urban overcrowding. Because this civilization was flourishing, it led to a lot of migration into the cities. The infrastructure was not able to hold that many people. This happened. Excuse me, sorry. And last is Aryan invasion theory. Well, this has been disproved. Clear? So these are the other theories. And that would be all. With that, we conclude today's lecture. So thank you so much for watching, everyone. And I'm sure it has added value to your preparation. But it will add more value if you're consistent and regular with this lecture series and you revise it from the notes provided by us on our Telegram channel. So in the hope that you'll do that, I shall take your leave with the promise of seeing you again with another set of news items. Thank you, everyone.